Hello, Hoovies, and welcome back to the third channel. Hooray! It's 2024. I didn't make a Hello to 2024 video on this channel because the main channel is the important channel, really, in the grand scheme of things when it comes to announcing that it's a brand new year. But we're back with our interview, with the first interview of 2024. Hooray! And this is a very exciting and very apt interview, might I add. Originally, you wouldn't have thought, oh, this interview won't be appropriate for the time, but as you'll find out, it is very appropriate for the time, especially the day it's being recorded slash hopefully uploaded. It's very apt for the time, but you'll all find out during the interview. Today I'm interviewing someone very special. They are best known as the composer for the amazing CBC show The Sarah Jane Adventures. It's the one and only Sam Watts.
Hello.
Oh. So we'll start right slap bang at the beginning of your career. How did you get into this interesting career choice called composing?
Well, bit of a long one, so hope you're comfortable. I went to university at the University of Nottingham, and we were very lucky to have a guest lecturer come in, which was a guy called George Fenton, who did the music for The Blue Planet and Gandhi and Hitch and all sorts of big films. And my tutor was very lovely and said to him, "Oh, I've got this guy who's interested in writing music for film and television. Would you have a chat?" So we had a little sort of 10 minutes after this lecture.
Yeah.
And then I was really annoying to him for the next sort of year, and kept begging him for a job, basically. And luckily, he was very nice and gave me a job. And
Yeah.
I worked with George for just over 3 years. And I worked on films like Hitch and Bewitched and Mrs. Henderson Presents, big films. Learned so much with him. And then one Christmas, he told me to get lost,
Oh,
and I was a bit sad. But he sort of explained to me that it was a good time for me to go off and do my job. Otherwise, I'd be working with him all the time, and not really writing my own music. And then I panicked a lot because I was 23, I think, and living in London with no job, no money coming in, and not knowing what to do. And then he called me back in the March of the next year and said, "I'm working on this little TV show, and I need you to write a bit of it for me."
yeah.
And the little TV show was the very first Planet Earth.
Wow.
Yeah, which I believe is in 50% of a copy of the DVD is in 50% of every all homes
Yeah.
in the world, which is unbelievable. But yeah, so that was my start. I had to do some the thing called the Planet Earth Diaries, which was
Yeah.
the little making of sections at the end of that.
And was there any particular TV shows or films as you were growing up that inspired you to choose the career path of composing?
Um, yeah, I loved. I'm a real Trekkie. I love Star Trek,
Yeah.
and the music for Star Trek has always been um, a bit of a passion of mine. Similarly, Star Wars, the music for Star Wars is unbelievable. Everything by John Williams just
Yeah.
has always inspired me. But the reason I wanted to make TV uh, were things like Dark Season,
Yeah.
Queer as Folk, um, basically a lot of Russell T Davies
Yeah.
TV shows really inspired me.
And you mentioned there the wonderful Russell T Davies. What was it like working on his spiritual successor to Sarah Jane Adventures, Wizard versus Aliens?
That was a lot of. I loved that show, and I was really sad that we only did three series of it. That was so much fun because I got to record with the BBC National Orchestra of Wales for that.
Yeah.
And there is nothing quite like hearing 78 musicians play your music for you. It's an amazing experience. So yeah, I loved working on that show.
Yeah.
And I got to create. Sarah Jane was brilliant, and I loved that show. But I had to sit in the world of Doctor Who that had already been created.
Yeah.
So that's a slightly different challenge. But when we did Wizards, Russell was lovely and gave me free reign on basically how the music was going to sound.
Yeah.
Um, and I got to really play with it on my own there, which was fun.
And do you reckon that soundtracks to TV and film work better when it's done by a live orchestra rather than digitally created on, like, let's say, a synth keyboard?
It depends on the kind of thing. If you're looking at something like Stranger Things, which is all synths,
Yeah.
the music is amazing. It's so clever and really well done. But it's a very specific type of thing. I love hybrid stuff that's real
Yeah.
musicians and synthesizers and things. I love that sort of music. I definitely think that music sounds better when it's played by real people.
Yeah.
We've got some amazing tools now that we can pretend we've got an orchestra in our little box that sits under our desk, but we don't. And as great as they are, the most the most mediocre piece of music can sound fantastic when you've got a lot of people playing it because they're all putting their heart and soul into it, and it really lifts the music. So I think real players are vital for great soundtracks.
Yeah. And one of the things that you've done that became a giant hit, the program that, as of in a few hours, as of time of recording this, we'll be airing another episode, which is a fantastic program. What was it like working on the theme tune to the UK version of The Traitors?
Um, Again, a lot of fun. I was actually working on the UK and the US version together, and I did slightly different endings for the two ones. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. The production team on that show are amazing. Like they're so clever, they're so switched on, they know what they want. So it was a real collaborative effort of me kind of coming up with some ideas, playing it to them saying, yeah, we love that, we'd like more of this, we think, and so we sort of shaped this thing, and none of us
Yeah.
knew that Traitors was going to be what it is
Yeah.
now. It blew up in a really amazing way.
And did you get commissioned to do the UK version and the US version at the same time, or were you already working on one of the versions first?
No, I was asked to do both the UK and the US version at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't talk too much about timelines and things like that because we have a lot of very secret things that we have to do in the production of a show like this. But yeah, I was asked to write for both of them at the same time by the production crew.
And when you were making it, did you listen to the other versions of the Traitors from around the world to get a feel of what the theme tune you might want it to sound like?
I didn't. I did watch They gave me the original uh, Dutch version, the one from the yeah. That so I watched. I was planning on watching like a couple of the main format points, and maybe spending half an hour looking at what they were doing with that show,
Yeah.
um, to get a feel for the basic thing, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
Literally, I couldn't. I had to watch all the episodes. I was really invested in it, and that was the moment that I thought, yeah, I really want to be involved in this show. But yeah, we more came up with the idea for how it was how the music was going to be in conversations
Yeah.
between me and specifically two of the producers.
Yeah.
And we really sort of they gave me some we like these sorts of
Yeah.
pieces of music, and I put my own flavor to those.
Yeah. And when all these like programs come out and your music becomes released to the general public, do you spend time watching the programs that your music is involved in, or do you run for the hills and just wait for everyone's feedback?
It depends. I quite like when I used to live in the UK. I now live in Canada.
Yeah,
Um, and when I was in the UK, when was working on a show, I'd love to watch it live and go on social media and see what people were saying about the shows live, because that's always kind of fun.
yeah,
Um, Now I don't. I do watch the finished product a
yeah.
lot of the time, but I often don't get to see the, for instance, the British Traitors. I don't get to see until it comes onto television in Canada. So I'm months and months behind everyone else.
Yeah. But you do get the opportunity to see the Canadian version, which is supposed to be very good of the
I
trailers.
I do, but I have to admit I've not got round to watching it yet. So I need to watch the Canadian version.
Now, one of the things that you've done that people outside the UK were slightly annoyed of because they were so excited to watch it because it seemed such a good program and everyone in the UK, including myself, loved it. What was it like working on the 60th anniversary spin-off, Tales from the TARDIS?
Tales of the TARDIS was a very tight schedule, but really lovely because I hadn't worked directly with Russell and Julie and Phil and Scott Hancock
Yeah,
since Wizards, not properly anyway. So it was really nice to go back into that world. It was lovely to be working with them again because it's always so much fun. But it was also really nice for me. I grew up watching Sylvester McCoy was my doctor, so I was really excited to be able to write music for Sylvester and other some of
yeah,
the other classic
yeah.
doctors and their companions, and it was a really nice. It felt really nice to be able to do some more Doctor Who. So
Yeah.
yeah, I loved it.
And when you because you had worked on Sarah Jane Adventures,
Mm.
how was working on Sarah Jane Adventures different to trying to compose the new music for a similar style for the sequel Big Finish series Rani takes on the world? How was working on that different to working on the Sarah Jane Adventures?
Well, there were a couple of things. Firstly, doing audio drama is very different from doing television drama because on television you've got the vision part of it. You've got the pictures, so people can see what's going on. So although you have lots of very clever sound design and things, it's music and sound design in television support the story that's being told.
Yeah,
In an audio drama, the music and sound design have to help tell parts of the story that the listener can't see. So I worked very closely with Naomi, the sound designer,
yeah,
um, which was great. And you have to you have to approach it slightly differently because you have to think about not getting in the way of the dialogue, which is the same on television, but you have to think about how you can help tell the story and how you can move things along in different ways. So it's a different challenge. And the other difference was we weren't telling the story for the same, well, actually we were telling the story for the same audience, but
yeah,
we weren't telling the story for the same age.
yeah,
So the people who would be listening to Rani are mostly people who grew up watching
yeah,
um, the Sarah Jane Adventures,
yeah,
and the sensibility was slightly different. It was slightly um, more adult, and also the producer Emily and I and the director Helen, uh, we knew we wanted to make sure it was a modern sounding music. So I worked very hard to not fall back into the original Sarah Jane feel because
yeah,
it's 17 years old now. That makes me feel really old. And Yeah, so I wanted to make sure that it was modern, but I did want to give nods to the
Yeah,
original
yeah.
score. So you'll hear there are uh, some little themes that were in Sarah Jane are in Rani as well.
And it really works really well doing these things. So a lot of uh, things and people are doing stuff like so like with for instance one I can think of off the top of my head is Basil Brush. He's doing new shows for the audiences who watched him when they were younger, and those type of things work because they're
Mm,
trying to build on the words. The modern word is just now. I want to say that word.
nostalgia.
Yeah, that word.
Yep.
That a lot of people think it's that, but with Riley Ticks on the Wood, it's more of a here's what happened next because of the way that we want the character. We want to know if the characters could exist because Doctor Who can
Mm.
track anyone, and knowing that they're there. Do you reckon that having this audio series, do you reckon this will open up the gates for the characters to appear in the main show again?
Well, that's a question you'd have to ask Russell. But I mean, I'd love to see them back on the screens. I mean, um, uh, Angelique and Danny and Tommy are brilliant. They're wonderful. And that's I think part they are really responsible for the characters being so well loved still now because they're such great actors. And um yeah, I'd love to see them back on our screens. I think it would be interesting for the Doctor to bump into Rani and Clyde again and
Yeah.
see them a bit more grown up, but we'll have to see.
And one of the things that you've done that doesn't get enough people talking about it, such as it's not on the Whoniverse just yet, but it needs to be added to because it was equally as incredible as the main show. What was it like working on the Sarah Jane Adventures Alien Files?
I actually didn't do anything new for that. That was something where they took all the music that I'd written for the Sarah Jane Adventures and they put it on the Alien Files, how they wanted to use it. So that was an interesting one. They almost had their own library of music.
And do you reckon that doing that meant that you would do you feel like you had to because you weren't really working on it per se, as in like you weren't
Mm.
really doing anything new. Do you reckon that still worked, or do you reckon that you when you watch it you could have like altered a few bits to make it sound slightly better?
No, I think it still worked because they had a really good team of editors who knew what they were doing with the music, and because it was all part of that brand and it all sounded the same. It worked really well. So I'd always love to be able to write everything to picture,
Yeah.
um, but it doesn't always work out that way.
And for anyone out there that's watching this, what advice would you give people for up and coming composers of how they would like what's the best place to start when they're thinking about they want to compose music for TV and film?
Practice lots, write lots, um, be- become good at the craft. That's the first thing, and I would try and find filmmakers and you know producers and directors and writers and people like that to make a network with, to get to know, to work on their short films and to work on those sorts of things so that you really learn how to do it. um, and then you can kind of do the thing that I did, I guess, which is be a little bit cheeky and reach out to people. But a bit of advice I would always give is don't just reach out to everyone and anyone.
Yeah,
Reach out to people who you like the work of.
yeah,
So, you know, like I did with Russell, I actually got in touch with Russell and said, I want to work with you. Um, and luckily he said yes, not go away.
yeah.
Um, but that's the kind of thing. Don't just get in touch with everyone and anyone who has their name on telly,
Yeah.
um, because people want. We've all got really big egos, basically, and we want people to say that we like our stuff. So if you can honestly go and say, "I really enjoyed this," then you know you can then start to build a connection.
And one of the things you've done that's really good and has a fantastic cast in it. What was it like working on Being Human?
That was really cool. It was. I only did the pilot. Sadly, they didn't take me on to do the whole series. But we never thought that was going to get picked up as a series, so it was a one-off. But the I did that because Julie Gardner was exec producing it, and Matt Boosh, who was producer on the early series of the Sarah Jane Adventures, was doing it, and they asked me on, and it was a lot of fun. It was a great show, and I would have loved to have done the series, but a very nice person got that job instead of me, so I can't really be too upset.
And how is it different composing drama and sci-fi to composing like factual and more of a documentary style stuff?
Very good question. In there are slight differences, but in all cases, what you're trying to do is support what's already there. Um, so with drama, for instance, you've got great writing, great direction, great actors. You don't actually need to do very much with the music. You're just sitting there supporting it. And with documentaries, you've got really strong stories. There can be amazing drama in them. If you think about things like Planet Earth, they're so dramatic. Um, and you're trying not to get in the way of that storytelling. You're trying to enhance it. So in a way, they're very, very similar. But um, I think there is a certainly with sci-fi, for instance, you can afford to let yourself go a little bit more and be a little bit more over the top. And yeah, that kind of thing. It's sort of, I guess, genre specific. You can do slightly different things,
Yeah.
um, but at the heart of it, all writing for picture is very, very similar. You're just there to try and the really good scores just support what's going on screen without sort of overbearing.
And do you reckon that with the evolution of um, computerized, do you reckon that composing will always be with amazing orchestras?
Um, I think that it's difficult with the sheer volume of stuff that's being made and with the way that, trying to not get too political about it, but the way that companies are doing things now, it's very hard to persuade people to spend the money. But as soon as you do, they always love the fact that they have. But I think that because we're composers are composers, we love other musicians. We love our music being played by musicians. I think that we will always try and find ways to have
Yeah.
orchestras and real musicians involved as much as we can.
And do you reckon that in the future, when I say the future, I do mean like 10 or 15 years, do you reckon that soundtracks and TV themes and all this type of orchestral music will become more popular enough to appear on Classic FM?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Classic FM already play quite a bit of stuff. They play quite a lot of John Williams um, and composers like that. Debbie Wiseman, who is an amazing composer. Um, yeah. So, and there's definitely over the last sort of 20 years, probably 30 years, maybe, there's been an increase in the popularity of film and television
Yeah.
music, and I think that you only have to look at all the concerts of live films and TV shows that the orchestras are playing along with live. The increase in those, which George kind of started with the live Planet Earths, really, and Live Blue Planet. Yeah, the increase in those shows how popular it is, and I do think so. I think it's going to be. I'm hopeful anyway that it's going to be a very popular thing, and just get bigger and bigger, really.
And on the back of that, they were because I remember seeing I'm not well known enough to be there, but I remember seeing that for the second Avatar for the premiere, whichever the correct word is, they had a live orchestra play along with the film so the orchestra were in the room. They were playing. Basically, they had the film on without the soundtrack because the orchestra were in front of you, and that would be a cool experience to bring back because obviously silent film used to have a pianist in the corner playing
Yeah.
along and having a whale of a time and getting bored halfway through thinking this is quite boring. So do you reckon that that type of thing would resume because of the in uptake of people wanting to feel like they were the young again and listening to all this amazing music that they remember? Do you reckon that more orchestras will appear in like special screenings of films?
Yeah, probably. I think that the live concert film showing thing will continue and probably just get bigger and bigger. I mean, I've been to I when I lived in the UK, they used to do them at the Royal Albert Hall quite a lot. So I went to see. What did I see? I saw E.T. and Titanic and Back to the Future, all with live orchestra and the film on the big screen, and it was brilliant. They're always such fun, and they're such a it's a different experience
Yeah,
because you also get to see, certainly most people don't get to see what it's like to record the score for a film, and you sort of get a glimpse of what it's like in a recording studio at those concerts. So um yeah, they're great, and hopefully they'll keep going for a very long time.
yeah. And do you reckon that you'll be working on a if you might already be, but you might not be allowed to say, but do you reckon you'll be working on a third series of Brownie Takes on the World for Big Finish?
I don't know. And that's hand on heart honest. I don't know if any more is being made, and I don't know if I'll have the time to do it if it is. Um, so that's not a very exciting exclusive for you, I'm afraid, Tom.
Um, and do you reckon that you prefer composing for visual mediums, or do you prefer composing for the audio medium because it's more intimate?
I don't think I have a preference, to be honest. I think that I'm sorry, there's a car alarm going off. If you can, I don't know if you can hear it in the background. Hopefully, it will stop in a minute. Um, yeah, I don't think I have a preference. They're very different, and they come with different challenges. And the thing I love about this job is every day can be different. You know, every show is different. Every project you're working on is different, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't think I have a preference.
And do you know if there's going to be a second series of Tales from the TARDIS?
I don't. I'm useless. I'm sorry. I'm not a great font of knowledge for everyone watching. I would love there to be absolutely, but that is in the lap of the god that is Russell T Davies, I believe.
Yeah. And do you reckon that with the in uptaking podcasts being more dramatized, do you reckon that composers will be roped into working on podcasts as not as well as audio dramas and radio programs?
Quite possibly. I've done a few themes for podcasts, but I've not done any because there's some really cool kind of dramatic podcasts, aren't there? That where they kind of dramatize ghost hunting, or all sorts of different things. So yeah, I don't see why not. I think a lot of people don't have much of a budget for those, so normally they're sort of licensing music in or using free to use music, which we'll not go into. But yeah, I don't see why composers couldn't be working on those sorts of things.
Yeah, because podcasts in the drama and the comedy sense are becoming a lot bigger. So the recent success I've seen is James Acaster's uh,
Mm.
podcast audio drama type series that where he had I think I can't remember the name, but one of the people from Stranger Things was on it playing a dog. So he was on it barking. That was his
Mhm.
whole thing, and that was like so that's like showing the success of podcasts. And do you reckon that podcasts are going to be like so popular that they're going to outlive TV? And do you reckon that you'll end up shifting?
I don't think so. I think they're very different. That's kind of like, when film came along, did people stop reading books? And the answer is no. Um, So I think there's a place for all of it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think hopefully we'll be making still making television and podcasts and all of those things for a very long time.
And did you make a new theme, or did they use your original themes for the Traitors podcast slash visual podcast Unclog? Did you do an original theme for that, or that was the same theme as the Traitors theme?
No, they used the music that I'd written for the Traitors. Yeah, BBC Sounds, the BBC Sounds team nabbed all of that music and plopped it on wherever they liked. So yeah.
And and do you reckon that because of the success of all the things you've done, do you reckon that your love for composing is still there from when it began, or do you reckon that it's like a brand new feeling now that you've become this successful composer?
Well, thank you very much for calling me successful. Um, I yeah, I think I love the job more than I ever did. Really, I've been very lucky to work with great people in my career. So yeah, I love it. It's a great job, and I'm excited to see what jobs come in the future and see where my music goes.
And I don't know how much you're allowed to say about the contracts and all that, but when your shows get repeated or put on a streaming service and iPlayer and released on physical
Hmm.
DVDs, do you still get the royalties from the music being played, or do you only get royalties from the first time it gets shown?
No, the way royalties work is that they continue to come in from any area that pays royalties. So yes, for instance, if you want to watch uh, The Traitors 77 times on iPlayer, I will get paid some money for that. So yeah.
Yeah. And does that work the same with physical media like DVDs?
All of this stuff depends on contracts, depending on uh, who owns the rights to things, all of that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Um, but yes, there are varying royalty streams that can come in. It just depends on exactly how the publishing or the master recordings or whatever are owned.
Yeah. And do you get excited when you find out that a show you worked on 10, 15 years ago starts becoming popular and like a lot of people start watching it? And like for instance, when they re-put on Wizard vs Aliens on iPlayer, a lot of people got that buzz about it again, going, "Oh, I remember this!" Whoosh, and then a lot of people saw it. Does that like is that like a good feeling, or do you feel like, "Oh, yeah, I remember doing that," or do you get, like, really excited the more people are seeing it?
I do get excited the more people are seeing it. It's very yeah, it's very enjoyable seeing it go out again. It's not so enjoyable when people say, "Oh, this is rubbish," but it's nice when people say, "This is great. I didn't even know this existed." Or especially with things like Sarah Jane, when they put Sarah Jane back on iPlayer, and you get people saying, "Oh, I grew up watching this. I've watched it again, and it reminded me of being a kid." And yeah, it is really nice to have stuff going back out again.
Yeah. And with your career ever expanding and moving on and getting better and better and better, do you have any, like, dream programs or dream, like, areas you would want to compose for?
As long as I can pay the mortgage, I'm happy. But I would, I would very much like to do a Marvel TV show, or maybe a Star Wars TV show, um, or a Star Trek. So one of the things that things that I grew up watching is always fun. Um, yeah, those kinds of things would be fun. Um, and basically, I need to make everyone who works with Russell, every other composer who works with Russell, quietly go away somewhere, um, so that I can get to work with Russell more, because I love working with him. But no, you know, Murray's great, and Blair Mowat, who did Nolly
Yeah.
with Russell, and is just wonderful and such a nice guy as well. I love Blair. um, there's room for all of us, really. But yeah, so something that is something like that would be kind of a dream job, I guess. But like I said before, every day is different in this job, and I just really enjoy that. I really enjoy the challenge of a different project every time.
Yeah. And for people out there that are don't have the budget to be able to afford a 16, 17, 18 piece orchestra from the BBC just lying about in the house, is there any particular softwares that you would use for to create like a not like a replica of the sound, but a similar sort of sound for like beginners, as you will?
Well, there are lots and lots out there, and I I don't have any affiliations with any, and I don't really want to plug any one over another. I think it's really about finding things that you can afford, and things that you think are going to work well for you. And it depends on what kind of music you're writing as well, because um, you're going to need different sample libraries for big orchestral stuff, like some of the stuff that I do, to doing something smaller, like someone like Niels Fram, or something that is really intimate and clever, and has all sorts of wonderful textures. Um, so yeah, you're. It really depends on the kind of music you're writing as to what you need.
Yeah. And and do you reckon that with the like evolvement of these like formulaic programs, do you reckon that more of the traitor style programs will like come out the works because of it being more successful? And do you reckon that you'll end up being asked to recreate that type of feel with these with these like clones, as you will?
Possibly. I think that the reality format and sort of the reality game show format has been around for a while, and will continue to be around. I think we kind of struck gold with Traitors, and it's very unique in it's kind of lightning in a bottle. Those sorts of shows don't come about very often. Um, but I think it'll be around for a long time. And I'd be perfectly happy for people to come and ask me to do music for their reality shows. I won't be trying to recreate Traitors, because that's their thing, and uh, I don't like to try. I don't like to repeat myself too much. But yeah, I think there'll be. I think we'll see. I think we'll see a few more of those yet to come. Definitely.
And with the Traitors Series 3 being in the casting process, do you reckon that that'll be as successful as the second series currently is?
I hope so, and I think that if we've learned anything from the second series, is that nobody knows what those very, very clever production team members have up their sleeve, because I think a lot of people in series two, especially the contestants, went in thinking that it was just going to be like series one, and they've had a bit of a shock that it wasn't. And knowing the production team, they won't make series three will be different again.
Yeah,
And I think that's kind of the joy of a format like the Traitors, is that they can keep mixing it up and
yeah.
making it different. So um yeah, so that will be great. It'll be interesting to see, and I think will help the longevity of the show as well.
And do you reckon that because of the success of the UK version and the success of the airing of the Australian and the US version, do you reckon that the BBC will decide to air all of the versions of the Traitors to be like the mega home for the Traitor?
I don't know. I think there are probably, because it's a franchise. I suspect there would probably be rights issues in all of that. I don't know. It might. I don't think they might not want to oversaturate it. Um, I'm not sure people would want to. There are over 20 versions of it around the world now, and um, yeah, I don't think people would want to watch necessarily all 26, 27, whatever it is, versions that there are. So I don't know. It's probably unlikely to happen, but those are decisions that people way above my pay grade make.
Yeah, because obviously they had the slightly issue with the Australian version of The Apprentice. Not many people watched it as you would have thought because A, they didn't really know the celebrities, and B, it was on BBC Three on a Tuesday, and not many people were really latching on because Lord Sugar couldn't care less because it was for charity. He wasn't really hiring anyone to work with him, so he went along with it and said, "Oh, we've sacked them all. Oh, let's bring them all back. Oh, let's sack them all again. Oh, let's bring them all." It was like he was playing a yo-yo with them, because they had no idea who they were either. And do you reckon that when you worked on uh, Planet Earth and David Attenborough's stuff, do you reckon that the music is as key to that show as David Attenborough's voice is?
Very, very good question. And a tough one to answer because Sir David Attenborough is an absolute legend, and I think he changed the face of documentary, and he changed the way we view the natural world. And he's an astounding man, and I think that he brings a real weight and authority to those shows. Um, but I think that the music is certainly equal
Yeah,
to the dialogue in there. I mean, again, I think with things like natural history documentaries, you've got three things that are well, four things that are working in working together to tell the story, and that's the dialogue, the music, the sound design, and the pictures.
yeah.
Um, so they're all you're all working in an ideal world towards the same goal. So uh, I don't think there's a level of importance as such, but I would say that dialogue is always at the top of the list
Yeah,
because Sir David telling us what's going on is how we really know what's going on.
yeah, yeah. Or else we're just looking at two Beatles having a fight. We don't really know what they're thinking, but David Attenborough knows what they're thinking because he's got a telepathic brain.
Dr. Doolittle, yeah.
Yeah, he's a real and more clever version than Doctor Dolittle because he is like he knows if these Beatles are having a fight or they just love each other.
Exactly.
Exactly. And how did you when you're looking at these things? Because with for instance with animation, the voice actors are looking at what's going on. When you're composing, like for instance, like with Planet Earth, are you seeing some of the stuff that's on screen? Do you have an idea of the sort of action that's being played, or are you recording this before they've gone out and filmed these Beatles, for instance, having a fight or in love with each other?
It all depends on the production, but with Planet Earth, for instance, that took something like 5 years to film.
Mm,
Um, so most of the time, when you're writing to picture, you come in after they've filmed everything,
yeah,
and you'll be working. Sometimes with documentary, especially, you're working to what are called assemblies,
yeah,
which are the versions before you finish editing.
yeah,
Um, so things will change and move around and get shorter and longer, and you have to
yeah.
change your cues, your music slightly to fit and things. But yeah, so Planet Earth we did all to picture. Things like Tales of the TARDIS, all done to picture.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's kind of how it
yeah.
works.
And when you were doing Tales from the TARDIS, was it more trickier to do because you had to try and make sure the music faded out perfectly to when the omnibus episode was gonna play out? Do you reckon that was harder because you weren't always performing to the action? You were had to stop at the perfect moment.
It's just, I don't know whether it's harder. Again, it's just a slightly different thing. I had I had some fun with that. We spoke about how we were going to deal with those. The director Joshua, producer Scott, and myself had lots of conversations about that. But I had some fun with it. So I tried to put some little nods to the music that was on the original shows that we were, bookending. So, for instance, um, Mark Ayres is a friend of mine. I've known Mark for a very long time, and I tried to blend into the opening of his score so that it was sort of seamless.
Yeah,
And that was nice for me because I got to pay a little nod to his music and things. So yeah, it was a different challenge, but it was good. It was fun.
yeah. And so at this point in the interview, because it's a fantastic interview, this is your opportunity to promote anything you've got either releasing soon or is currently released for people to go and buy or listen to.
Well, you've done a very good job of promoting everything for me. The things that are out are series 2 of the Traitors in the UK. In the US, the second series of Traitors starts this Friday, the 12th. Uh, Tales of the TARDIS is on iPlayer. But yeah, that's kind of all that I have out there that I can talk about at the moment. So, yeah.
And do you know when the second series of the Traitors US will come to the UK?
I don't. I'm afraid. Again, not something I'm involved in. So I'm hopeful that it will. It would be. It seemed to be popular enough
Yeah,
last year that they'll bring it back across. But I'm not sure.
because John Burkhouse in the Traitors US would be hilarious to watch.
It's going to be interesting.
Yes, and Alan Cumming is on the Graham Norton show on Friday. So
Oh, excellent.
so who knows? Because they normally they haven't said what he's on to promote yet, but because of the Traitors US, I've got a feeling that he's gonna say when it's gonna come out there and then.
They may well touch on it.
Yeah,
But
they
yeah,
may,
I don't know.
because he was. I sometimes think he's better than Claudia because he's actually Scottish and he's got that creepy Scottish to it. And Claudia's just too much. Keep dancing. Imagine that. Keep murdering. Yeah, imagine. I would just
I love them. I must admit, I love them both. I think they are very different presenters of the
yeah
show. They do it in different ways, but I think they're both fabulous.
yeah.
Yeah, I love them.
And they're both better than the Australian version because the Australian version had a British guy in it, and they had took till the final episode for them to introduce who he was. So then all the articles like, "Who is he? Who is he?" Because he was never there. They never touched on him. He was like the mystery man. He was the mystery British man called Paul. Just no one knew who he was, where he come from, and why he was there because the camera never panned on him.
Maybe he was a ghost. We
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. And do you reckon that because of the success of these shows, do you reckon that the music will end up winning the music equivalent of an Oscar?
Um, I mean, I'd love to win an award for my music. Um, Probably not, to be honest. I think that with the awards, there's often, especially with the music, that they don't always think of reality TV, for instance,
Yeah,
and game shows as being at the pinnacle, um, which is a bit of an industry problem. But I'd love to win an award, but
yeah,
you never know.
yeah. And so we come towards the end of this interview, and this is another good opportunity to tell people where they can find you. Do not give away your actual home address.
You can find me on all sorts of social media. Instagram and Twitter are both I_is_Sam. Really original. You can hear my music on pretty much all streaming platforms, but I'm on Apple Music and Spotify. You just need to search for me. The Traitors album is on there, along with a bunch of other stuff of mine. Yeah, that's kind of it, really.
And will the Traitors UK and US new series soundtracks come out after they've aired on TV?
Um, I don't believe that there will be additional soundtrack releases, just the one that we have now.
So for all Traitors fans out there that want to relive the horrifying moments or recreate your own Traitors at home with the actual music, you can do that because that'll be hilarious at a dinner party. You just
Well,
murdering
do you know? Do you know what, Tom? It was very funny watching. Very funny watching because I've got the artist side of things, so I can look at who's what's being listened to and stuff. Around Halloween, there was a big peak in the Traitors music. Everyone was obviously having Traitors parties for Halloween.
That'd be amazing. And I can just imagine, like, because of the way that YouTube is now, I can imagine that YouTubers that have more money than me will be able to do their own versions of the traitors. Because that'll be really interesting. Because I was thinking for a long time, but logistically, it was a nightmare to do a Doctor Who equivalent of it, where you have a load of Doctor Who YouTubers and you just rename traitors and faithfuls to Doctor Who equivalents, and you just watch them all just squabble against each other, because that would just be interesting. But because of logistic reasons, that can never be possible, because A, there's too many Doctor Who YouTubers and they're all get angry if they weren't involved in it, and second of all, they're all over the world. Like some of the biggest ones are in Australia, which is odd to say that the biggest Doctor Who YouTuber isn't British because it's a British program, but that's saying that Doctor Who's popular all over the world, such as the Traitors. I think the Traitors, Hunted, and Taskmaster, I think, and Stuart and Danton are the top 4 TV formats, I think, around the world, because they're all being made, and to various successes, they're all
Mm.
successful. And do you reckon that because of the wave of wave of like popular format, do you reckon that means that it's becoming the UK is becoming a good home for like starting off a format for it to evolve around the world?
Um, Definitely. I mean, I will say that Traitors didn't actually technically start in the UK, but yeah, I think so. And there's some amazing talent in the UK, like really great makers of television. Um, so yeah, I think the UK. I mean, the UK's always been a bit of a leader in. They make great drama. They make you know they make great telly and great films. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because for instance, Taskmaster has become a good success around the world. Well, not in America, but everywhere else in the and Belgium and Germany. But most other places in the world, it's become a good success, and that shows that even though you would say that the audience in Britain's small for because we're not the largest country in the world, but we have like excellent formats that are being successful everywhere, and it's because of the incredible talent. So without Claudia Winkleman, I wouldn't think that the Traitors UK would have been as successful, because she's known for glittery and light entertainment and not really being a devious,
It
murderous
was a
woman.
it was a clever choice, and I think her stylist Sinead has a lot to be thanked for with the fantastic outfits that she wears. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the production would have been successful because um, the team who made it were brilliant, and they would have chosen another great
Yeah,
host. But I there is something particularly delicious about watching Auntie Claudia, the
yeah,
nation's lovely kind of surrogate mum figure. She's just such a lovely, lovely person. There's something delicious about watching her enjoying being quite so nasty
yeah,
in a nice. I mean, she's nasty in a
yeah,
nice way, but it is there is something very special about that.
yeah. And she loves having those ruffle necks being higher and higher. And
Yeah, the career highlight that was the French and Saunders sketch for comic relief, where Dawn French just disappeared behind a roll neck knit. Yeah, that was brilliant.
yeah. And did you have anything to do with the music for that sketch, or did they?
Again, they used the stuff. They used the stuff that was already there, and again, they used it really well. Because it was just, it was sort of part. I didn't even know it was happening
Yeah.
until Comic Relief was being advertised, and they sort of started to promote it. I had no idea. So, but yeah, that's a great honor that my music was used for French and Saunders.
And so there we have it, another fantastic interview, and the first of many interviews of 2024. There'll be interviews across all 20 of my YouTube channels. Yes, I said across all of them because I'm hoping to to have the channels now just sneakily just invade more people, and well, not invade them like as in when you evade when you used to invade a country. I mean invade as in like get to interview them because I've got an excuse because I've got the channel for it, not just because I'm amazing at everything I do, but I am amazing. And that's not being narcissistic, that's just fact. And so, anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. And remember, no, I've just forgotten.